Welcome to the Diverse Minds podcast, where we give you the tips, tools and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, well-being and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal well-being. Welcome to the 121st episode of the award-winning Diverse Minds podcast. And this month, the podcast has focused on access and accessibility, thinking about how certain groups have access to certain careers and how others don't, have access to safe buildings, have access to communicate. So this week, just before Christmas, I'm so excited and delighted to be speaking to an award-winning burgeoning fashion designer, Parastro Qalandri. Parastro was born and raised in Afghanistan, and due to the war, she had to flee to Pakistan as a refugee with her family. And then in 2011, she moved to the UK, knowing no English. She's just graduated with a first-class honours degree and is currently doing her MA degree in fashion at Kingston University. Her final collection is based on her life and is an exploration of the culture and context of her birthplace, Jaghori, south of Kabul in the east of Afghanistan. Parastro has always valued her culture, and so she decided to introduce her background, being from the Hazara culture, to the fashion industry through her work. She has been heavily influenced by the rich history and heritage of textiles in Hazara culture, and she takes inspirations from shapes and colors used in everyday life of Hazaras and transferring that to knit and print. Not many people know the positive and beautiful side of Hazara culture, so it's important for her to make sure everyone is aware of her rich culture in Afghanistan. She says she always felt a sense of not belonging to one place, and her collection gives her a sense of belonging, creating a happy atmosphere for her to be lost in. She's also worked out that she prefers to have a multifaceted approach to textiles using multiple textural and surface pattern techniques. So I'm so excited about this conversation. So Parasto, a huge welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're so excited. And, obviously I saw you on the news program and I was so excited to learn about you and your work. I've read out a little bit about your bio, but I think it'd be great for the listeners to know more about you, how you, do what you do and how you got into fashion.
So I was born and raised in Afghanistan, but of course, due to the war, I had to flee to Pakistan as a refugee. And in 2011, I moved to UK with not knowing any English with my family. And I graduated with a first class honour in University of Derby in fashion. So as a child, I've always grown up with my mum and my auntie and my grandma, like sewing, creating clothes, embroidery. So it was a lot of like hands-on work. So I was growing up with that, and I kind of had the interest of learning how to crochet at the age of 9. I was doing that for a few years before I came to UK. And then when I came here, because I didn't know how to speak English, it was so much easier for me just to spend my time in the art rooms. And I think that's how my creative side kind of came out. Like I was just spending a lot of time in there. And when I was in sixth form, so I went to Deferris Academy School and the sixth form. And as I got to the end, the last semester, we had a choice of doing like different subject areas. And so you could do like fine art, or you could do the BTEC side of it, or you could do fashion. And somehow I chose fashion, and that's how I got into Derby. And my interest for knit started in second year when I was just learning new techniques, and I ended up going to Julian McDonald's. That was a really nice internship. Like I could do that again. It was like really long days, like 10 o'clock till like 6 or 7. But it was like it would go really quick because I was enjoying. And then, that's just how it started.
That's fascinating how you've just described it. And I think the thing is, in the UK, we have been given a very single narrative about Afghanistan and the people. And of course, there's been a war. Of course, it's been horrific. I'm not denying that. But within that, there is so much more to it. So I also wonder whether you could talk a little bit about Hazara culture, which is your culture, and the things that are at its core and what it means to you and how that comes out in your work.
So Hazaras are one of the ethnic groups in Afghanistan, which from decades they've been overlooked, they've been treated wrong, there've been a lot of genocides. It happened in between 1996 and tea, and it's happening now. A couple of days ago, it happened. So for me to use my culture in a positive way, so people don't just see the negative side of Hazaras or Afghanistan. I've always valued my culture. I've always loved what we have, like my heritage, what my grandma, my mum, how they taught me. So therefore, I decided to introduce my background as a Hazara to the fashion industry through my work. I've been heavily influenced by the rich history and heritage of textile in Hazara culture. Got a lot of colors going on. There's a lot of patterns. Most of it, like, it's freestyled, but it's just the way you work things, and it's the colors that means a lot to me, because it creates like a really happy atmosphere for people to live in Afghanistan and to explore those cultures. Unfortunately, not many people know the positive and beautiful side of Hazara culture. It is important for me to make sure that everyone's aware of how rich the culture of Hazaras are in Afghanistan, and not just the negative side of what they don't do, because nowadays all we see on the news is how things are going bad. But it's really important for us as a young generations of Hazaras or Afghans to show the world that we have more to us than just war. It's not always just the war. And always, because I've grown up in Pakistan. I was born in Afghanistan and I was here when I was 13. So it kind of, like, my collection and my heritage kind of gives me a self of belonging not belong in the sense of belonging to one place. And it creates like a really happy atmosphere for me to be in.
Yeah, there's often a sense, isn't there? And of course, I'm definitely someone who's had this fluid diaspora heritage, very different to yourself. But I call us inside outsiders, so that we know things, but we see it from an outside perspective. And I also wonder, you talk about how being in the art room was a way to belong, to hold on to something, and how you got lost, in a positive way. So you were totally immersed in your craft. Yeah. How, I don't know if you want to say more about that and how that's helped you to feel rooted and grounded.
So my mum does a lot of embroidery, and she's always done. So we have like a culture of where women, before they get married, they do like a lot of embroidery sets, like curtains, pillows, and like a lot more things, like handkerchiefs or little embroidery sets, just to take to their husband's house.
Yeah, the trousseau. The trousseau.
Yeah, the trousseau. Yeah. So I've always grown up seeing her do all these embroideries. So I've got like a lot of embroidery dresses from my mum and my dad's side. And so it was kind of like looking at how peaceful they used to just sit down like around my auntie lot and just chat away and just embroider, and just give me like a sense of peace. So working in art rooms pretty much the whole time, because I was just bullied in school. So it was just a way of me escaping the whole negative side and just being lost in what I do. And it was always just been like really calming for me to do craft work. And when I work, it feels like I'm in a good place. I'm in a positive place. There's nothing else that matters, even though a lot of things going on around me when I'm working. No stress. It just helps me with a lot of other things. There's stress, like even it just feels good to do something practical for me, because my mum always wanted me to be an accountant, and I can't just sit down and, like, for me it's like I have to be hands-on. That's how I've grown up.
So what I'm hearing you say, it's about that mindfulness, it's about that absorption, and part of the culture is that I'm guessing people would sit together and communicate in community, doing their trousseau, doing their embroidery, using their hands, connecting with their minds. So this sense of community, but also personal expression within that community.
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant. Better explanation.
Not at all. And I wanted to ask you actually two things. One, the first question I had was around cultural appropriation. So of course, this is your culture. You have an insight, you speak the languages, but Every year we see on the catwalk some hideous trend that, Western dominated, white dominated fashion houses seem to adopt. So this year we saw Trompe l'oeil take from hip hop culture in a very, I think, exploitative way. And, feel free to disagree with me. Some years we see fashion designers sending models who are non-Sikh from the non-Sikh faith, who aren't Sikh, in Sikh turbans. So how do you think people like yourself from various cultural backgrounds and diasporas can guard against this and really be leader in the fashion industry with the cultural insight that you have?
So for me, it's an honor for someone to use a culture, but what I don't agree with is how they don't reference where they have this inspiration from, because as a culture and as an ethnic group, we don't want people to oversee our culture, and for someone just to come and grab it and not give us any credit or not give us any recognition is not really, what is the word?
Acceptable.
Yeah. And for designers like this new generation of, for example, let's say me, like everything that I do, I try to reference it back to where I got it from. And it's just a thing that we were taught in university, is that referencing your work is the best way to appreciate the culture.
Yeah, absolutely. So that recognition, that understanding. I think the word grab that you used is a really key one, isn't it? There's a difference between referencing and literally weaving into versus grabbing and making those huge amounts of money from it without understanding the underlying concepts and principles rooted in culture.
Yeah. And also, like you mentioned about the sea and how the designers, the turbans on white, like, I'm not going to be I'm not being racist, but
so it's the fact that they're not from the Sikh faith.
So if they're using something such as turban, they need to use models who are from that culture, because it gives them a sense of appreciating the culture, not just using, and it's just like not using and abusing it. That's the word.
Yeah, definitely. And then the other side to this that I've been thinking about, Parasto, is, with stereotyping and pushback. So the assumptions people have about Afghanistan, about Afghani women, what they can do, what they can't do, like, oh my God, you're so amazing. Now, you're totally amazing. But this, you don't want people to say that with pity. And we don't want people to look at other Afghani people, from diaspora communities who are living around the world like that. So, how can we all be responsible for educating people and going, wait a second, all women have talents. And yes, they come with a particular cultural perspective, but hey, let's not pity people.
Yeah, so as I've grown up in here in UK, and I've seen and heard a lot of things, like a lot of negative things. There's hardly any positive words I've heard about Afghans. So as I started university, I started being confident in myself and who I am. And every time like someone would ask me where you're from, I would just say, yeah, I'm Hazara, I'm from Afghanistan, and this is what we do. And they were like, oh, this is so great. We don't see Afghans in this field, or we don't hear any positive things about Afghans. And I always try to make them understand that we do have positive side, and you don't need to like assume something that you've not lived in. And I know a lot of great people, a lot of great Afghan women in Afghanistan or around the world who are doing great work. And for them, it's an honor to introduce my culture to everybody. I do that out of just, it's not a big deal for us, but it's a big deal when someone don't know your culture, or that they've not lived with you, or they've not lived in Afghanistan, and for them to assume that it's always the bad and negative side, and it's always the war. We have a lot of positive, and we have a lot of beautiful aspects in our culture that people don't see. And for me, it's important, and I try to bring and tell the individuals like all the positive things that I can say. And Yeah, it should never be an embarrassment for anyone to express where they're from or express how they feel about what's going on around them. Yeah.
And that's the thing. I don't think we are taught in the UK about the colonial history, what happened in Afghanistan, why things are the way they are today. And of course, the rich history that continues today. But before all of that, like you said, it's not just about war. So what I tell people is, you need to look for those sources. They are there. Educate yourself. We have a lot of academic information, but also people on social media, and there is lots of information, but I think people are quite lazy, aren't they? They like to believe this single story because it's what we see all the time, and it just means like, oh well, we don't have to then think too hard about it. We can just look at what's presented on the news.
Yeah, that's true. It's just really frustrating and annoying how people assume and they judge. They judge even me. Like when I was in university, and people just assumed it was always about the negative things until I was like, you know what, it's enough. Like I've heard enough and I need to do something about this. And therefore, like my whole collection is about the rich history and the culture. So people know that we have a lot more to ourselves than just what they assume. And it's amazing how like the response that I got from being recognized, by Anne Davis, which is like a big thing for me and my family and everybody, and especially in Burton, everybody was like so proud of me, and it felt so nice to do something for your culture that brings the happiness in your people's face.
Yeah, beautiful. And so, what do you think women who might have had similar journeys to yourself, global majority, diaspora women from those communities, can be encouraged to work in creative roles? Because we absolutely need more people from different walks of life to be working in these spaces. So, what are your thoughts if anyone's listening? How can they be encouraged to work in creative roles?
So we're all different individuals, and for someone who wants to be in a creative role, it is really challenging and it's very competitive. But if you've got to be passionate about your work, just go for it. There will be a lot of things that you think, oh, well, this is wrong. I shouldn't do this. People in my culture don't do this. Individuals, but like women, they have less opportunity. There's a world of opportunity there. There is a world. I was told when I first started doing fashion in university, I was told, oh, you should stop this. You should do things that are more practical, things that have more income, like a money problem. Like Afghans, especially, we've been through a lot of money problems. So for them to see me doing like things like fashion that we don't really get a lot of money, or we don't have a lot of income to start with, it's really hard for them to accept it. But as I went along, I was like, no, I'm not going to hear what they're saying. I'm going to do what I like. My parents have been really supportive, bless them. And it's just, yeah, just do if you think it's right for you, don't hesitate it. It's gonna be hard, but everything you start new is gonna be hard for you. So you might as well just use the hard that's best for you.
So follow your heart, follow your passions, and there will be a way in which it can work out, and stand in what you know is going to be right for you in the end.
Definitely, yeah.
And so, Parasto, actually, the things you've talked about really do impact on mental health and well-being. So I think I might know one of the answers, but how do you look after your own mental health? And what are your top 3 tips, particularly as you're doing a really intense MA at the moment?
So not going to lie, it's been really hard, but my first therapy is my mum. So every time something goes wrong, I just ring my mum and talk to her, and it gives me like a sense of relief. Like, talk to her, she gives me advice, and I've got my friends around me. I've got my cousin who's basically my best friend. They have a big part in how well I'm doing at the moment. And another thing is I just listen to music and just go for a walk. That's the 3 things that I do, other than obviously working creative.
And what kind of music do you like listening to?
I love Bollywood movies.
Oh, do you? Okay.
I love Bollywood movies. and the music the old ones from 90s, not the new ones.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 90s kid.
Oh, amazing.
I've grown up with Bollywood and Hindi songs, and it's just, they're just really calming and amazing. And also like Persian songs, because I don't know, because I wasn't really grown up with Hazara music. I do listen to it. I love it to pieces, but they use a lot of words I don't understand, which is really stupid to say, but I've kind of grown up in between Pakistan and UK. I was little when I went to Pakistan, so but I do listen to Hazara music sometimes, when, especially around my mum and dad, because they just can't live without Hazara music. But beautiful. For me, it's always, most of the time, it's Hindi and Persian songs.
Oh, amazing. And so, Parasto, another reason I said to you, I'm really happy to have you on the show, is because when you are this stratospheric designer and I won't be able to afford anything from you, I can say, guess what? She was on one of my podcast episodes. So hopefully people are listening and feeling the same way. And if people want to know more about you or your work, how should they contact you? And I will include this in the show notes. Yeah.
So I've got Instagram. I've got like a university or professional Instagram, Parasto.Qalandri, and it just says, and I've got LinkedIn as well, Parasto Qalandri. I've got Facebook, and I've got my email as well. But obviously, if they need that, then they can just ask me through Instagram or LinkedIn.
Perfect. It's been such a joy. And, I really hope that I can commission something from you soon, because your work is so beautiful. So do check it out. And it's been an absolute joy to have you on the show today. And I wish you all the best, and I hope we can keep in touch.
Thank you so much for having me. It means a lot that you recognise my work and appreciate my culture. It's great. You don't really get that a lot nowadays. But yeah, it's been great to talk to you.
Oh, you too. And I grew up actually in a family that talked very positively about Afghanistan, and we read a lot of books around Afghan culture, and so that's maybe why I have the perspectives that I do, because we always used to talk about that in my family. So it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting to hear someone who's not Afghan talk so good about Afghanistan and all the positive sides of it, not just the negative. It's appreciated.
Oh, and it's brilliant to speak to you. And listeners, please take care. And next week we'll be talking about the year of gratitude that I've had, and you can listen back to that, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.